San Francisco Opera presents the world premiere of Appomattox, with music by Philip Glass and libretto by Christopher Hampton. Starring in this premiere cast are Dwayne Croft and Brian Lehrhuber as General Robert E. Lee, Andrew Shore as Ulysses S. Grant, Rosalind Jones as Julia Dent Grant, Elza Vandenhever as Mary Curtis Lee, Heidi Melton as Mary Todd Lincoln, Kendall Gladden as Elizabeth Keckley, Noah Stewart as T. Morse Chester, Jeremy Gallion as Abraham Lincoln, Chad Shelton as Brigadier General Edward Alexander, Ji Young Yang as Julia Agnes Lee, and Philip Skinner as Edgar Ray Killen.
As we go marching on, 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 as we go marching on.
Any writer or painter or musician, your work is autobiographical because it's about your life. And in a way, the Civil War is about my experience of it, my experience of the issues of the Civil War. It just happened to be how I grew up, where I grew up. My experience was this. I grew up, I was born in 1937. 1941, we go to war. By 1942, every male in my family was in the Army. I was raised in Baltimore by a house full of hysterical women. Hysterical for good reason. This was a Jewish family. They knew what was going on in Europe. It was a terrifying event for people. And I came across some book about the surrender that took place in Appomattox of the Army of Virginia that was led by General Lee to the Union Army led by General Grant. And I was so impressed. This is just 3 or 4 years ago. And I was so impressed with these men. You know, they were both astonishingly complex and men of tremendous moral courage and stamina.
Let me make it clear to you, my intention is to win the war. Striking romantic poses does not tempt me. I am more interested in success, only success.
And when I was so impressed by them and about how they talk to each other and how they behave with each other, and I thought that there was no one in public life today who was like that.
They say I am indifferent to these debts. I've been stigmatized and called a butcher, but you know me well. I have such a horror of blood.
In addition to highlighting the magnanimous characters of Grant and Lee, Glass poignantly depicts the joy of freed slaves with cheerful song.
Another historical character that's actually rather interesting is a journalist named T. Morse Chester, one of the first black journalists who wrote during this period.
In his first art, he's pretty optimistic that the African Americans will be considered as citizens, and later he sees how they're treated and he's really angry.
Seated as I am in the speaker's chair, so long the very center of treason, I hasten to describe here for my readers the atmosphere of Richmond, since our army has marched into
And
the
then
city,
it jumps forward in time, describing what happens 100 years from the time of the Civil War, as in Montgomery, Alabama, with the getting people the right to vote, signing them up, and the riots, and the beatings by the police of the very peaceful marchers.
And the opera will be rounded out with a kind of the symmetry I mentioned, with the women having the last word as they had the first word in their epilogue, where again, joining their thoughts together, they worry about the fact that this terrible war and this terrible devastation, this horrible strife may not have happened for the last time.